a later game. It's during the week too, so we had some extra time in the hotel where there wasn't football on. So we had to find some different things in the hotel for our guys to do, and that's where our physical preparation staff and Coach Losey's staff really come in hand, and they do a lot of neat things there. But we're always trying to think about everything. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting all the departments to work together.
How challenging is it with, like, obviously you mentioned, like, you guys for football, you don't have to, but for the Olympic sports, it's different. How much, like, information sharing is this, like, hey, sorry, you guys have to take a red iPad and do X, Y, and Z, and then maybe connect them both more, like, how difficult do you think that is to try and factor in when you're talking coast to coast with non-football sports?
Yeah. So your question was, is it challenging for the Olympic sports?
What are the challenges? Because it's obviously different than football.
Certainly. Well, I think you brought it up. You know, you said it yourself, where anytime you're not chartering, where it's direct to the location, it's going to present some extra challenges. So for us, we just need to be thinking about how can we increase blood flow if they're on a bus for an extended period of time. If they're sitting in an airport a little bit longer, what are creative ways that we can find fueling? Our nutrition staff does a really neat job sharing education and doing things there. But it's just finding creative ways to do that. And then going back to Pat and his support, he's been creative in finding additional aid to get us, maybe not always chartered, but a little bit more direct. And that's been really awesome.
What has it been like working with Pat? You've spoken a lot about him.
Yeah.
What does he bring? What about his perspective?
Yeah.
Do you think it's a little different?
I don't know if this is the greatest answer, but I grew up in a coaching family. Both my parents were in education. My dad was a ball coach for his entire career, so I grew up around coaches. When I'm around Pat, I feel like he's an administrator, but he's a coach. So when he says something, I want to rally behind that, and that's just on a personal level. On a professional level, his support, his presence, where he'll pop in and just ask what you're doing. His presence around asking hard questions, it's just really, really stimulating.
When you think about your time here, how have you seen this department develop, and what are some of the big changes that you've seen in this area?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very new field. In the last 10 years ago, it didn't exist really in performance science as a whole. But I think what we're seeing now is not just the proliferation of technology everywhere, but we're seeing who can use the information the smoothest, who cannot be the bottleneck, meaning if I have all the information and it only comes through me, I'm a bottleneck. We'll only operate at the speed of me, and that can really bog down the system. So how do we take the information and spread it to coaches, to support staff, to the performance staff, and then more importantly to the athletes who are living it every day, and then many of whom are going to go to the NFL and have to use that type of information. So to me, it's changing in that who can use the information the best will be the ones that succeed.
What's it like when you have a player come in? All these players come from different high schools with different levels of infrastructure. Some of the, maybe the private schools, it's very different. What's the process like of kind of onboarding someone who might not have any experience with this stuff? How do you guys go about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, whenever I meet a new athlete, it doesn't matter if he's a newcomer coming out of high school, if he's a transfer. My biggest thing is trying to subjectively identify what his training age is. So chronological age would be like, I am this years old. I'm 30 years old. I'm 37 years old. Whatever that is. Training age is the total time that you've actually spent in a formalized training setting. So you can have an old person, an old dude that comes into the program with no training age, and he's going to operate at a much lower age. So we need to handle that slightly different. Conversely, if you have a young cat that comes from a really well-developed training culture, he may come in at a higher training age. So that's step one. And then, with like Coach Losey, they do a fantastic job profiling the guys from a physical side. When we're working on testing the guys, any new guy that comes in, we do a series of jump tests on our force plate to profile our guys based upon positional averages all time from the past in their group. We do some hamstring screening, and then just some general movement assessments. So.
Have there been any guys that you're like, whoa, this is a freakish profile? Like, have there been some of those guys that you're like, oh, this is different?
Yeah. So going to numbers, I will not necessarily mention numbers. I want to default to Coach Losey for that as a central point there. But I think some of our new guys, like King Mack, Okoye, those guys coming in are four new guys that transferred in. They offer some different things. All these different guys have different profiles, but very unique in their way.
You kind of had touched, when you guys are dealing with airports and travel and things like that. When you're on the road, what kickoff time, like between like noon, 3:30, and 7:30, is the most difficult for you guys to kind of plan for?
I don't think there's really any kickoff time that's challenging to plan for. You know when it is, typically a week in advance, and you can start to lay out the plan. You can make some adjustments, and I'll really throw another hat tip to just our administrative staff and Kevin Threlkill and those guys. As soon as that information is gathered by those guys, they disseminate it to everybody that needs to know. Then we can all start to make our plan. So I don't really see any as challenging. I just keep coming back to the point of being able to start fast, and that's maybe a teaching point for us all. It doesn't matter if it's an 8 a.m. I got a meeting at 8 a.m. I got to be able to lock in and start fast, whatever that is. If it's an 11 a.m. kickoff, it's an 8 p.m. kickoff. Start fast. We want to teach that because it helps us on the field, but it also transcends to life.
James had mentioned a few years ago that he felt like sleep was the most underutilized resource in college football. How difficult is it to get college kids to buy into that? Because I'm sure this, obviously their schedules are a little different.
Yeah. Well, I will say I think our guys are different. I
Okay.
think our guys are really aggressively trying to find what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how informed student athletes are now. So it's not foreign to them. You mentioned it yourself that the college life is challenging because you have so many demands: academics, a social life, football. So now what we need to do is just find creative ways to get them surrounded by opportunities to sleep, whether it's adjusting schedules slightly. We have a fantastic sleep room in here that we talk about sleep extension and just adding a little extra time in an informal nap, real short, like 20 to 25 minutes before we start team meetings. So we're always trying to supply the guys education. Going back to support from Pat across all of our athletics bought all of our athletes a Whoop band. So all of our student athletes use Whoop, so now we can objectively measure how long our guys are sleeping, how quality or how good their sleep is on each night, and then we can put that information back. You guys have been here a lot. You see on the doors, you're entering the most competitive environment in college football. So we put leaderboards internally for everything, and that includes sleep. So it really starts with us. We have to keep educating. We have to keep pushing, and many of them do buy in.
You kind of talked about the benchmarks for the athletic profiles. I mean, do you think at this point with the data that you have that you really have it honed in on what Penn State is looking for at every position, and what's it like when an outlier comes through? How do you kind of determine an outlier versus what you're typically looking for?
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting, and that is something we're getting really excited about. We don't know if new data coming in is going to give us really novel insights. So we do think we have a good data set. So all we do is just basic statistics. Here's the average within that position group, and then how far within 1, 2, 3 standard deviations does that new data point fall based upon our positional average. We just try to simplify it, use colors, show our athletes where they are, and keep nudging them to get a little bit better. But we just use basic stats to show that, and we do, you're right. I think we do have a good data set now. We've been doing this since 2018 here with our data, so we do have a good data set.
Didn't you guys use Whoop before, though, right?
Yes,
Wasn't
ma'am.
that this for a while?
We used Whoop pre-COVID on some concussion study athletes.
Okay.
So through some of our relationship with HHD across campus, they had some research studies that funded that. And then now, once Pat got here, we were able to spread that across all of athletics.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.